Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. The House delivers the article of impeachment to the Senate. Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the Chief Justice doesn't want to preside over Trump's second impeachment trial, so it falls to the next in line, Democrat Senator Patrick Leahy. And the Supreme Court throws out two cases against Trump as moot. The cases were filed against him while he was president. The Senate confirms Janet Yellen as Treasury Secretary. She's now the only woman and the oldest person ever to hold the post. Senator Ted Cruz proposes limiting the number of times lawmakers can be re-elected. He says he'll continue to fight to keep career politicians accountable. And a new move on the political front from former President Trump. He's opening an office of the former president in Florida to move forward with his administration's efforts. Trump's impeachment case is now in the Senate's hands. The House delivered the article of impeachment on Monday. President Biden told CNN the impeachment trial has to happen, but he doesn't think Trump will be convicted.
Donald John Trump engaged in high crimes and misdemeanors by inciting violence against the government of the United States.
Democrats are accusing Trump of inciting insurrection in a speech to his supporters on January 6th before the attack on the Capitol took place. There were incidents of violence towards law enforcement officers. The FBI and DOJ have opened at least 200 cases in connection with the breach. Dozens of subsequent arrests indicate that different groups were involved, not all of them Trump supporters.
Donald John Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security, democracy, and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law.
Trump left office on January 20th. Democrats hold 50 seats in the Senate. They would need all 50 votes plus 17 Republican senators to join them to vote to convict Trump. 10 House Republicans joined House Democrats on the vote to impeach the president earlier this month. Around 30 Republican senators have expressed opposition to the impeachment trial, either disagreeing with the charge or the impeachment of Trump after he's already left office. Senator Rand Paul calls it an unconstitutional sham and says he will force a vote on whether the Senate can hold a trial of a private citizen. If Trump is convicted, senators could choose to disqualify him from ever holding office in the future. No president in U.S. history has ever been convicted. The Senate's longest-serving Democrat and President pro tempore, Patrick Leahy, said Monday he will preside over the trial. He'll also serve as juror along with all the other senators. The U.S. Constitution states the Supreme Court's Chief Justice shall preside when the President of the United States is tried in an impeachment trial. But since Trump is no longer president, Chief Justice John Roberts had the option to turn down the role. Schumer said on MSNBC that Roberts has chosen not to preside over the impeachment. That puts Leahy next in line. The Supreme Court has not responded to requests for comment. Leahy said he will not waver from his constitutional and sworn obligations to administer the trial with fairness. The Senate confirmed Janet Yellen as the nation's 76th Secretary of the Treasury. The 84-15 vote marks the first time a woman is in the role.
I am thrilled today to vote to confirm the first woman to ever hold the position of Treasury Secretary, and someday add her portrait to that hallway.
The 74-year-old is also the oldest to hold the role in recent history. Yellen is the third member of President Biden's cabinet to be confirmed. She was chairwoman of the Federal Reserve from 2014 to 2018 under the Obama administration. Her term wasn't renewed by President Trump. Before the vote, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer also told the floor that Yellen has bipartisan support and that she has a breathtaking range of experience. As Treasury Secretary, Yellen will play a key role in shaping and directing Biden's economic policies. Former President Trump scores a victory as lawsuits against him are thrown out. The Supreme Court sent two cases back to the federal appeals courts to be dismissed as moot.
The Supreme Court has thrown out two long-shot anti-corruption lawsuits against former President Trump. The High Court dismissed the cases, saying it wasn't relevant because Trump has left office and become a private citizen. All justices agreed on the ruling. The lawsuits came about because Trump refused to give up his business empire while in the White House, although he did step aside from managing his businesses while president. The lawsuits claimed that while in office, Trump violated a clause of the U.S. Constitution. The clause forbids government officials from receiving gifts from foreign states and monarchies without the consent of Congress. In one of the suits, the District of Columbia and Maryland argued that foreign officials staying at one of Trump's hotels implied corruption. In the other suit, the lawyer argued that competitors to Trump's businesses were at a disadvantage as they could not offer a connection to the president. The Supreme Court made the decision to dismiss the cases Monday.
Former President Trump is seemingly jumping right back into the political scene. He's opening an Office of the Former President in Palm Beach County, Florida. The move comes amid questions on how Trump will get involved in politics after leaving office. A statement from the office explains it will manage Trump's correspondence, public statements, appearances, and official activities. The office aims to advance the interests of the U.S. and to, quote, carry on the agenda of the Trump administration through advocacy, organizing, and public activism. Senator Ted Cruz is trying to put term limits on lawmakers to hold career politicians accountable. Here are the details.
Senator Ted Cruz and other Republicans have reintroduced an amendment to the Constitution to limit the number of terms lawmakers can legally serve. It would limit senators to 2 6-year terms and representatives to 2 3-year terms. Cruz said, "The rise of political careerism in today's Congress is a sharp departure from what the founders intended for our federal governing bodies. I have long called for this solution for the brokenness of Washington, D.C., and I will continue fighting to hold career politicians accountable." He hopes it could give more oversight and accountability to people on Capitol Hill. He said, "Every year, Congress spends billions of dollars on giveaways for the well-connected. Washington insiders get taxpayer money and members of Congress get reelected, all while the system fails the American people." Other Republicans who have joined Cruz include Senators Mike Braun, Pat Toomey, Marco Rubio, Todd Young, and Rick Scott. It's the third time Cruz has introduced an amendment to impose term limits. One opponent argued in 2019 that term limits would make it harder for Congress to do its job, and without an election to worry about, lawmakers could be less concerned with the needs of their constituents. Cruz is asking colleagues to submit the amendment to the states for speedy ratification.
The White House signals it plans to continue the U.S.'s hardline stance against China. It's a response to recent comments from the head of the Chinese Communist Party, who spoke at the World Economic Forum.
We're starting from an approach of patience as it relates to our relationship with China.
At the event, Chinese leader Xi Jinping called on countries to cast aside what he called ideological prejudice and to, quote, reject the outdated Cold War mentality in an effort to fight global challenges. But Psaki said these comments don't change anything. She added that the Biden administration's approach on China remains what it has been for the last months, if not longer. She said the White House seeks to tackle China's threats with its own methods, explaining it aims to play a better defense. That includes holding Beijing accountable for unfair practices, protecting U.S. data, and maintaining the United States' technological edge. The airline industry is off to a bumpy start in 2021. As it recovers from the economic fallout caused by the pandemic, the Biden administration issues new policies that could hold them back. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
President Biden has made masks mandatory on domestic flights. That change got support from the airline industry, but another new presidential policy has rubbed them the wrong way. The new press secretary announced the Biden administration will reimpose travel bans on Europe, the UK, the Republic of Ireland, and Brazil.
With the pandemic worsening and more contagious variants spreading, this isn't the time to be lifting restrictions on international travel. And in light of the contagious variant, B1351, South Africa has been added to the restricted list.
The airline industry has already felt the impact. As of Monday, airlines like the International Airlines Group and Deutsche Lufthansa saw a sharp drop in shares. In his executive order, President Biden also made it a requirement for international travelers to self-quarantine after entering the U.S. According to the U.S. Travel Association, the mandatory isolation for international travelers could be extremely difficult to enforce. Trade groups said the requirement is another setback to an industry trying to heal from an almost year-long decline. In 2020, air travel fell by 60%, leading to a financial loss of $370 billion. U.S. airlines have appealed Monday to the Biden administration for more flexible, risk-based virus measures that will ensure the safe revival of air travel, and with it, the revenues necessary for them to stay above water. Don Schran, NTD News.
About 13,000 National Guard members remain in Washington, D.C. as of Monday. Top defense officials gave the update at a press briefing in Washington.
As we continue to work to meet post-inauguration requirements, the National Guard has been requested to continue supporting federal law enforcement agencies with about 7,000 personnel for the coming weeks. That presence will likely draw down to about 5,000 by mid-March.
Acting Army Secretary John Whitley and National Guard Bureau Chief General Daniel Hokanson gave details on the Guardsmen's D.C. presence. They explained that authorities are concerned about possible protests at upcoming events, adding that National Guard forces are stationed in the area so they can respond. Twitter suspended MyPillow founder and CEO Mike Lindell. Users of the platform see a blank page if they try to look him up. Some users will see the message, "You're trying to follow a user that doesn't exist." Lindell's personal Twitter account had over 500,000 followers. Twitter accuses Lindell of violating the platform's policies. It's over posting information related to the civic process that Twitter classed as misleading. Lindell is a supporter of former President Trump. He often posted political commentary on the 2020 election. The suspension of Lindell's Twitter account is the latest in actions taken against Trump and his supporters since the January 6th breach of the U.S. Capitol. Senator Josh Hawley is calling for an ethics investigation into some of his Democrat colleagues. That comes after 7 Democrats filed a complaint against him over the events of January 6th.
7 Democrat senators are accusing Republicans Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz of having contributed to and legitimized the breach of the Capitol building because they objected to electoral votes after the breach happened. Hawley and Cruz objected to Electoral College votes from Arizona and Pennsylvania on January 6th. On Monday, Senator Hawley called for the 7 Democrats to be probed and denies their claim that his objections are linked to violence at the Capitol. Senator Hawley says the 7 should be disciplined to ensure that the Senate's ethics process is not weaponized for rank partisan purposes. In a letter to the 7 Democrat senators, Senator Hawley says that, quote, "I will not be intimidated by your efforts to silence me. The people of my state will not be intimidated by you, and you should be ashamed to have so grossly abused your office and the Senate."
Critical race theory is making its way through schools, companies, and even the government. But one mom in Nevada is fighting back. NTD's Christina Kim speaks to Gabrielle Clark to hear her story.
12th grader William Clark is a biracial student in Nevada. He was required to take a class called Sociology of Change, where he was allegedly forced to make professions about his racial, sexual, gender, and religious identities. According to the younger Clark and his mother, these identities were then subject to scrutiny, interrogation, and derogatory labeling from students and staff. He and his mom sued the taxpayer-funded charter school for violating their constitutional rights.
Nobody is going to hurt my babies.
Gabrielle Clark, William's mother, tells us the experience was difficult, but her family found strength in one another, and they kept their dedication to doing what's right. She says we shouldn't judge people by the color of their skin.
They want so badly to champion something. And I feel like they're creating a problem to champion. You can't judge somebody based on immutable characteristics when the person inside is what makes a person, not all of this extra.
Clark says we are always able to see good in the world, even in difficult times, and we need to focus on how to make things better, not look for problems to fight about. The Clark family has received support from all over the world, and she says this lawsuit gave people an opportunity to see things from their point of view.
Having to explain some of these things to his peers outside of the classroom environment has allowed them to see things from his perspective.
Clark encourages parents to pay attention to what children are being taught and feel empowered to reach out for help or speak out against, quote, dangerous curricula like this. She says people should explain to the proponents of critical race theory why this ideology is harmful for everyone. William is currently attending school virtually and is doing well. The original judge recused himself, but the case has been assigned a new judge and is making its way through the court system. Clark believes her case will be recognized by the court. Christina Kim, NTD News.
A Texas man who allegedly plotted a terrorist attack on Trump Tower in New York City pleaded guilty in court. He also wanted to attack the White House and other important places in New York City. The Department of Justice says 22-year-old Jalen Christopher Molina pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to provide material support to ISIS and 1 count of receiving child pornography. Molina admitted that since May 2019, he conspired with South Carolina resident Christopher Sean Matthews and other ISIS terrorist supporters to provide services to the group. According to court records, Molina and Matthews discussed traveling to Syria to fight alongside the terrorist group and plans to carry out the attacks on U.S. soil. And while Biden moves quickly to reform immigration policy, a Florida state representative proposes a bill that he says will protect the rights of citizens in his state. The representative wants to repeal a tuition subsidy for illegal immigrants. NTD's Melina Wisecup has the story.
A Florida state representative proposed a bill that would prevent illegal immigrants from getting subsidized tuition rates in the state.
Whether they're a Floridian, whether they're an American not from Florida, or whether they're a foreigner, illegal immigrant or not, we're not telling them who they can and can't admit. We're simply stating that foreign students cannot get in-state tuition.
In the past, Florida has spent around $45 million per year to offer illegal immigrants living in the state the lowered in-state tuition rates, while legal citizens from other states still must pay the full out-of-state cost.
You know, if you live in Georgia or Virginia or Puerto Rico and you want to go to the University of Florida, you have to pay 3 times as much as an illegal immigrant. And I just don't think that's fair. I also don't think it's fair to Florida taxpayers who have to subsidize our universities to the tunes of billions of dollars, in part because we're extending subsidies to foreigners. And I just don't think that's right.
And with the state facing a budget deficit due to the virus, finds suggest that Biden's immigration reforms will deepen the state's financial burden if they don't address this now.
And why would I want to cut kindergarten teachers? Or why would I want to cut roads or cut prison funding or health care or all of the other things? I have to cut something. So why wouldn't I cut $45 million that's going to illegal immigrants? We have to make cuts anyway. This strikes me as a no-brainer way to cut.
The representative is expecting to have a senator to support his bill, although no supporters have been named yet. Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
And just ahead, New York's Metropolitan Transportation Authority remembers its workers who have died from the CCP virus. A digital memorial honors the 136 employees. And California's stay-at-home order and curfew is lifted starting today. This is after seeing a sudden and unexpected jump in available ICU beds. Find out more after the break. New York transit workers have been hit particularly hard by the pandemic, and now the MTA is honoring their memory in a new digital display.
On Monday, New York's Metropolitan Transportation Authority announced a digital memorial at 107 subway stations. Mary Roman's husband died from the CCP virus in May.
To have their pictures out there and have their stories told and have people aware of the sacrifices that we've made, you know, as transit workers, you know, that means a lot to us.
The MTA is honoring its 136 employees who have died from the CCP virus since the pandemic began. The tribute features photos of the late transit workers accompanied by a poem titled Travels Far by former U.S. Poet Laureate Tracy K. Smith. The poem was commissioned by the MTA and will appear in multiple languages at the designated stations.
Well, it just means the world to us to be able to have this memorial in the system where so many of these men and women worked, so that our employees can see it every day, so that the families of our colleagues who passed away can gather and see it, and frankly, so that New Yorkers can take a moment and pay their respects.
Transit officials said the video tribute will play 3 times a day through February 7th.
A new Brazilian variant of the CCP virus has made its first known appearance in the United States. The carrier is a person who recently returned to Minnesota after traveling to Brazil. The Minnesota Department of Health says the Brazil variant was found in a patient who lives in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. The person became ill in the first week of January. There was no immediate indication that the variant was spreading in Minnesota. Health officials are also worried about the variants that were first reported in the United Kingdom and in South Africa. The Brazilian variant was first identified in 4 travelers who were tested at an airport outside Tokyo. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it contains a set of mutations that might affect its ability to be recognized by antibodies. California's stay-at-home order is lifted. This comes after a sudden and unexpected jump in available ICU beds. NTD's Eileen Eng has more on the story.
Today, California Governor Gavin Newsom and health officials announced that the state will be lifting the regional stay-at-home order and curfew.
All regions effective immediately are no longer in the stay-at-home order and will move back into the blueprint.
The regions include San Joaquin Valley, Bay Area, and Southern California, all of which have reported some of the highest COVID cases in the state. The decision comes after foreseeing a 4-week projection for ICU bed capacity to go past 15%, the required threshold to reopen.
Here is the projection of capacity on February 21st. This is 4 weeks from today. We look again at capacity, looking through the lens of a number of variables. Clearly, estimated ICU capacity, that's foundational, 15% being that baseline.
During his press conference, people commented their doubts on the forecast, including using the virus as a tactic for politics. In the Bay Area, ICU bed capacity jumped from the single digits to 23.4% over the weekend, just days after the presidential inauguration. People can expect to see services and activities resume this week. San Francisco Mayor London Breed tweeted, "The city will resume limited outdoor dining and personal services." The Associated Press reported that there is a lack of transparency for COVID-related data. Newsom claims his decisions are based on scientific data, but it was never shared to the public. This made certain decision-making inconsistent, confusing citizens and leaving doctors wondering if there's something they are unaware of. For example, earlier this month, Sacramento County reopened for outdoor dining when its ICU bed capacity was still at 9%. Eileen Eng, NTD News, California.
The 9th U.S. Circuit Court has denied a California church's appeal. The judges concluded that the lower court was not in the wrong, but ordered it to reconsider its restrictions.
South Bay United Pentecostal Church and its senior bishop had sued Governor Gavin Newsom and California officials in May of last year. The church wanted to reopen, alleging that the governor's resilience roadmap violated the First Amendment. The district court denied the request. The church says that banning indoor singing and chanting hinders church services and violates its rights. Judge Kim McLean Wardlaw wrote, "We are mindful that, even in a pandemic, the Constitution cannot be put away and forgotten, but we do not think this is what California has done." Both courts found that the church suffered irreparable harm by not being allowed to hold services as usual, but the restrictions were there to stop the spread of COVID-19. However, under Tier 2 of the governor's roadmap, indoor church services have an attendance cap of 100 people or 25% capacity, whereas retail and grocery stores can operate at reduced capacity, but without attendance caps. The judges said the church can succeed in challenging the attendance caps and order the district court to take action on the capacity limit. David Lamb, NTD News, California.
Hospital chaplains have become frontline workers during the pandemic. They're comforting patients in person and connecting them with loved ones virtually in hospitals throughout the U.S. Here's one of their stories.
Kevin Deigo is a hospital chaplain. For almost a year now, he's been ministering daily to patients suffering from the virus. Last week, nearly a dozen died on a single day at the medical facility in Los Angeles, where he works. 3 more passed within a span of 45 minutes the next day.
I don't have the words to describe how bad things are, how crazy things are, and how unprecedented this time is that we're living in.
His job at the 377-bed medical center is to minister to every patient and their loved ones. He's been praying with them, holding their hands and reassuring them for the last 11 months. Meanwhile, grieving families watch through the iPad he's carried into the room with him. Deigo has ministered to people undergoing hospice and palliative care, so he's no stranger to death. But he says he and his fellow chaplains had seen nothing like this before the pandemic struck last year.
It definitely takes a toll. And I was going to bed that night on Monday, and I just kept hearing the voices of both of the families on the iPad, screaming, crying, asking me why.
Holy Cross is filled with so many pandemic patients that it's had to double up some people in intensive care rooms. A makeshift area at the end of a hallway has even been turned into a hospital room. Since the current surge of infections began last month, the hospital is only treating life and death cases.
The San Diego Zoo is breathing a sigh of relief. Its gorilla troop is recovering after several of the animals came down with the virus earlier this month. 8 gorillas make up the troop, but the zoo has not said exactly how many were infected. The animals are eating, drinking, and interacting with each other, which suggests they'll make a full recovery. Veterinarians were especially concerned about one of the gorillas, Winston. He's older and has underlying health conditions, so he received a special monoclonal antibody treatment. Zoo officials say the care given to the gorillas will help prepare other facilities for potential virus cases. And coming up, 2 million virus test results from Beijing are sparking questions after all but one of them came back negative. And hundreds of thousands of people in China are stuck inside their homes. Many are now running out of food without a way to go and get groceries. Find out more when we come back. Two million Beijing residents get tested for the virus. And amid the country's strict lockdowns, one pet owner adopts a creative solution for walking the dog. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us the story.
First, an update on the pandemic in China. About 2 million people in Beijing took virus tests last week. That's about 1/10 of the city's population. All of them come from Beijing's 2 downtown districts. That's where most of China's federal agencies operate. The area includes Zhongnanhai, where Chinese Communist Party head Xi Jinping lives and works. Test results released over the weekend showed only 1 person out of the 2 million tested was confirmed positive. But China's official results may not prove accurate. The data comes amid allegations that Chinese-made test kits have a low accuracy rate. The regime is also widely thought to be severely underreporting its virus numbers. According to local media reports, the person whose results came back positive had already been sickened by the virus last August and later recovered. We can't independently verify this information, but similar reports from other countries may shed light on the situation. In a number of other countries, patients who had already been infected with the virus later caught it again, this time coming into contact with a different strain. Some of them developed severe symptoms and died. This may indicate that recovering from the virus once doesn't necessarily grant immunity from the disease. Chinese citizens have been forced to get creative under the country's strict lockdown measures. A video posted online shows how one person found an unusual way to walk his dog. Dozens of Chinese cities and districts are under lockdown. But unlike in other countries, citizens aren't allowed outside for daily exercise and other essentials. The harsh restrictions have left pet owners in a tricky situation. A video posted on social media shows one person's solution. A homemade leash was used to walk the dog, while the owner remained inside a 4th-floor apartment. Some netizens question how the leash was attached to the dog if the owner remained inside. The video gives no explanation. Another video going viral online shows a dog hoisted down and up so that it could use the bathroom outside, as it was used to doing it inside. This happened over the weekend in Suihua City in northeastern Heilongjiang province. As the dog breathed in fresh air for a short moment, its owners on the 8th floor were locked in due to the CCP virus.
In China's largest city, Shanghai, many people have been spotted collapsing onto the ground recently. This as authorities there continue to cover up the outbreak.
Online video taken Sunday shows China's Putuo Central Hospital in Shanghai limiting the number of patients entering and leaving the facility. That's due to confirmed CCP virus patients there. But authorities didn't publicly announce the policy. Locals in Baoshan district broke news of new lockdown measures on Friday. In one coffee shop, customers reported seeing workers in charge of local pandemic prevention. The workers reportedly asked the shop owner to seal the door, preventing people from entering or leaving the building. Subway workers also told our sister media, the Epoch Times, about another situation, saying they had spotted people suddenly collapsing in public while waiting on subway platforms and riding in trains. They noted both elderly and young people were involved. The claims come as similar reports appear across China. According to another citizen, a woman also collapsed inside a pharmacy on Thursday while buying fever medicine. It's impossible to confirm whether the incidents were caused by virus infection. Local Chinese media have steered clear of publicizing the stories, but the timing of the events has sparked questions. It's just 2 weeks after the virus situation in northern China took a turn for the worse.
A city of around 500,000 in northern China is now facing a food crisis. It's not because of a lack of supply, it's because of government lockdowns. NTD's Juliet Song has the details.
Hundreds of thousands of residents in northeast China are facing a food crisis. This as they're trapped inside their homes. One resident there says she only has a little food left. To protect her identity, we gave her a pseudonym and distorted her voice.
I've run out of flour and only have a little bit of rice left.
Liang lives in a city called Tonghua in northeast China. Local authorities there put residents under strict lockdown orders after reports of new CCP virus cases. Locals aren't allowed to go out, even to buy groceries. Liang says officials glue paper on residents' doors to seal them shut, but for those who do make it outside,
Police would arrest you once you leave your home, so who would dare to go downstairs under these conditions?
Authorities said earlier that community workers would deliver groceries to residents, but according to locals,
no one sends us anything.
To sniff out rule breakers, authorities offer rewards up to nearly $800 for information on violators. Liang says many of her local friends are facing similar food shortages. She says she doesn't oppose lockdown measures, but thinks the regime went to extremes.
It'd be nice if authorities allow even just one person to go out and get food every day. Not allowing people to go out is just, we don't have much food left.
Some local residents took to social media to call for help, but many of their comments have since been removed. Of the few that are left, one comes from a resident that's now living in the south. He wrote he couldn't fall asleep after seeing other distressed comments online, and that he knows his mother, aunt, and uncle haven't received any vegetable deliveries from community workers. The city's deputy mayor apologized last Sunday, saying authorities have organized over 800 volunteers to deliver groceries. Since then, some residents have posted videos online showing the deliveries, but others raise concerns over whether the aid will be enough. Tonghua City is home to at least 500,000 people. Juliet Song, NTD News.
And soon we'll see how the remote work trend is changing the job market. It's quickly become a first choice for many employees, and one study says it could lead to more productive companies. More on that in just a minute. CVS will start offering on-site vaccinations in 11 states this February. The pharmacy company's Associate Chief Medical Officer, Dr. David Fairchild, announced the news on Monday. According to him, CVS will start giving out vaccinations at close to 300 retail locations. The pharmacy chain had teamed up with the federal government to vaccinate residents and staff in long-term care facilities. It also announced Monday that all first-round doses in participating facilities had been given. Now, CVS will start vaccinating other eligible people. Its current goal is to provide 25 million shots a month or more. Fairchild said vaccinations will be done at no cost, even if a person is uninsured. Biden's Buy American executive order might look a lot like a Trump policy, but Biden's energy policies couldn't be more different. NTD's Grace Coulter has the analysis.
Biden has made fighting climate change one of his top priorities as president. In his first 2 days of office, Biden rejoins the Paris Climate Accord, froze permits for drilling and fracking on federal land for 60 days, and canceled the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline. Anthony Watts, senior fellow for environment and climate at the Heartland Institute, says canceling the pipeline is political, not environmental.
It's entirely a political move, and it's designed to satisfy some of the most far-left supporters that Biden has. In terms of it actually affecting anything in terms of climate, the effect is essentially nil.
And he says that train, the alternative method for transporting the oil, is more hazardous than a pipeline. Watts says Biden's environmental policies revolve around more government regulation, which he says won't result in less carbon emissions or pollution, but do result in a slew of other consequences.
The Biden administration seems to be hell-bent on regulating everything that moves. Seriously, they have plans, from what I've read, that they want to regulate all sectors of energy. And the end result is that's going to make energy more expensive. I have no doubt that within about 1 to 2 years, we're going to see the cost of gasoline in the United States double.
He says this will be due to regulatory measures, increased taxes, and reduced supply. Watts says these policies aren't going to benefit the U.S., but could be to the advantage of our adversaries.
And so we're going to be paying the price while China laughs behind our backs and continues to increase building coal power plants and other uses of oil and other fossil fuels to expand their own political and economic agenda. The United States, as far as I can tell, is not going to get any benefit whatsoever from these policies.
The U.S. became energy independent under the Trump administration because of slashed regulations, which led to more energy exploration. But Watts says now the U.S. is at risk of becoming dependent on other countries again due to the new policies halting and limiting the U.S.'s energy industry. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
For the first time since 1983, Anheuser-Busch isn't advertising its iconic Budweiser brand during the Super Bowl. Instead, it's donating the money it would have spent to CCP virus vaccination awareness efforts. Anheuser-Busch still has 4 minutes of advertising during the game for its other brands: Bud Light, Bud Light Seltzer Lemonade, Michelob Ultra, and Michelob Ultra Organic Seltzer will still appear. Those are some of its hottest sellers, especially among younger viewers. But leaving out the Budweiser ad is still a big decision. It's been part of the Super Bowl for nearly 4 decades. The Anheuser-Busch move follows a similar announcement from PepsiCo, which won't be advertising Pepsi, but will still promote its other brands. Other veteran Super Bowl advertisers like Coke, Audi, and Avocados from Mexico are sitting out the game altogether. Working from home is among the largest pandemic-driven trends both in the U.S. and abroad. The option to work remotely has become more appealing to employees in certain fields and career paths. And some studies show it could even lead to more productive companies. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
Businesses all over are rethinking the way their workers can get the job done. Many of them are adopting remote work amid calls to social distance and prevent the spread of the virus. According to a survey from employment website Monster, over 40% of HR professionals named remote work flexibility as the top change in business organization. The survey also found over 80% of employers plan to hire in the new year. Of those, about 40% said they're planning to replace jobs they lost, while another 40% said they plan to hire net new jobs. Over 90% said they're confident they'll find the right person for the job. According to employment database FlexJobs, several fields in the job market saw a 25% increase in remote work. Those jobs include marketing, administrative work, HR and recruiting, accounting and finance, and graphic design. All of these careers have an average annual salary of at least $30,000, with some topping over $100,000. Some sources say the trend will lead cities and towns toward becoming more livable and urge companies to become more resilient and productive.
The luxury chocolate maker Godiva says it's closing all 128 stores in North America. The move comes less than 2 years after the company laid out plans to open 2,000 cafes around the world in 6 years. By the end of March, chocolate lovers in the U.S. will have 3 choices to buy Godiva. You'll be able to order it online, buy it at one of the other retailers that stock it in their stores, or by traveling overseas. Godiva is keeping its stores in Europe, the Middle East, and China. Coming up, ski season is underway, but many resorts are suffering due to the pandemic. In the mountains of Italy, residents depend on tourism to support the economy. And also in Italy, workers find paw prints on the tiles of the Santa Maria del Fiore Cathedral. Experts believe animals in antiquity walked over the tiles as they were drying. More on that after the break. In a city west of London, a 450-year-old pub is set to shut down. It served scholars and literary heroes, making it another loss for culture due to the pandemic.
It's served alcohol for over 450 years and in modern times survived on the love of students and scholars. But now Oxford's Lamb and Flag pub has become another casualty of the pandemic. The ancient drinking establishment is being forced to close. The Lamb and Flag first opened in 1566 and was moved to its present location on St Giles, a broad thoroughfare in the city centre, in 1613, where it later became a favourite of authors like Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. Dave Richardson is a spokesperson for the campaign for Real Ale.
It's a place where people come to talk to each other and to enjoy the traditional historic surroundings. And generations of people have done that. Students, townspeople, people from afar who are drawn to Oxford because of this pub. It'd be a real tragedy to see it disappear.
The Lamb and Flag is owned by St John's College of the University of Oxford, but in a statement, Deputy Bursar Steve Elston announced the pub would close on January 31, as the pub is not currently financially viable. And it's likely it won't be the only pub shutting its doors because of the pandemic.
If we're not going to lose a vital part of our heritage, it is essential that landlords, owners of these pubs, give them as much leeway as possible to make their way when things get better. This is a very traditional part of English life. Not only is it a place to eat and sometimes drink, but to socialise. And people are beginning to appreciate the role of pubs in combating loneliness, which is very much a feature of life today.
One local lawmaker, Layla Moran from the Liberal Democrats, echoed Richardson's sentiment on Twitter, calling for the government to provide sufficient support for the Lamb and Flag and other historic venues to survive.
Tourists from around the world flock to Italy's Milky Way ski areas every year. There, they enjoy more than 250 miles of white slopes. But this year's pandemic restrictions mean things are a little different.
The Italian government says ski resorts won't open to the public until at least February 15th. Authorities had set the reopening date to January 18th, but later delayed it over fears of resorts becoming pandemic hotspots. Operators are voicing concerns that the winter season may not start at all. Even if resorts can reopen on February 15th, restrictions may considerably limit their business.
Currently, only 2 of us are working, plus a ski rental operator that we wanted to keep operative in order to both provide a service to customers and help him, as people like him do not have another way to earn a living.
Many in the northwest region of Piedmont say ski season is already over. In the region's mountainous areas, the whole economy revolves around the ski season. The hamlet of Sagnalonga has 160 chalets scattered across its snowy woods. With its chair lifts and cableways stopped, the hard-to-reach area is now only accessible by snowmobile. Sagnalonga has less than a dozen permanent residents. Most second home owners who spend their holidays here can afford their own motor sleds. But cable transport in Italy's mountainous regions is much more than a tool for tourist entertainment. It serves as public transportation for residents. 6 miles away, this brother and sister pair are waiting on government relief funds. She owns a hotel where he works as a chef.
The economy around here relies solely on tourism. Within a single family, we have a hotel manager, a bar manager, a restaurant manager, or a relative who works in one of those facilities. But also, the plumber, the electrician, the woodworker, all work thanks to the tourism sector.
These residents depend on tourism and are just trying to get by. They're hoping ski season can be salvaged.
Engineers working on the dome of Florence's famous cathedral have found paw prints on its roof tiles. Now the question is, how did they get there?
When engineers climbed the scaffolding covering the east side of Santa Maria del Fiore Cathedral, they didn't expect to find evidence of animals from centuries past. The tiles were made in the early 1400s. They were dried outside before being baked in furnaces.
During the drying process at the various Impruneta tile factories, the freshly formed tiles would be left out in the open to dry and could be walked on by farm animals or even wild ones. Foxes, chickens, dogs, cats.
Now experts are mapping them out one by one in a painstaking process. The lead architect in charge of the project says the tiles with prints were not discarded because they posed no problems as far as weight bearing was concerned.
Therefore, not having to support anything, these tiles are acceptable even if they have small, insignificant defects, like these animal prints on the surface.
Recently made tiles are put out to weather on the roofs of the cathedral. This process allows the newer tiles to age, so they blend in. Tourists and Florentines who look will never be able to see the paw marks up close, but they can visit the Cathedral Museum to see original molds and scaffolding used during its construction.
Soon we'll hear from a man who rides a different kind of bike as demand for bicycles is up since lockdowns began. And the Antiquarium in Pompeii, Italy reopens for the first time in decades. The museum features relics from the lost city as well as casts of residents who perished. Stay tuned for more. Whether it's going for a walk or a run, many people are finding ways to exercise outdoors during the lockdown. Our UK correspondent Jane Worrell met with a man who has an unusual style of working out.
Neil Lawton gets in his socially distanced exercise at an elevated level and leaves onlookers surprised and intrigued.
It just puts a smile on people's faces and the kids love it. Even young teenagers kind of say you're cool, which is pretty strange.
Originally from the Victorian era, the demand for these bicycles, called penny farthings in Britain, have increased during pandemic restrictions.
The manufacturer of this bike sold 2 years' worth of stock in 1 year. What excites me is just the sheer difference and danger riding it.
It's got its name from the British penny and farthing coins of the time. The pedal is attached to the wheel, so one way to begin to stop naturally is to slow down pedalling.
And the big argument is about braking. You have to have two independent braking systems. It doesn't say how good they have to be, but as long as they're recognised braking systems. Now, on a penny farthing like this, there are 3 braking systems. Don't stop pedalling, just gentle pedalling, keep the bike momentum.
Riding the penny farthing is a lot harder than it looks. This type of transport was popular in the 1870s and 80s.
Whilst it was designed by a Frenchman, and of course the original patent for a bike was by von Dreiser, German, back in 1817, it wasn't until the 1870s and 80s that this bike, with the help of British industrial Britain, took to mass producing it for the market of keen cyclists of the day.
And more than a century on, perhaps you'll spot a keen penny farthing cyclist or two while you're out exercising. Jane Worrell, NTD News.
The Pompeii Antiquarium has reopened for the first time in decades. It features dozens of precious findings, which are now permanently displayed for the first time.
The Pompeii Antiquarium is situated at the gate of the Roman city destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD. The antiquarium offers visitors insight into the history of Pompeii, from the pre-Roman period until the city's very last moments.
The new antiquarium reuses the spaces of the original antiquarium designed by Maiuri, and it works as an introduction to the visit, as it shows the entire history of Pompeii, from the pre-Roman era to the Samnitic period up until the moment of the eruption.
Guests can marvel at restored frescoes, marbles, and silver table sets and other items from excavations. Casts of a horse, casts of men and children found in a house, and distorted bowls are also on display, frozen in time. The antiquarium was built in the 1870s as an exhibition venue. It was damaged during World War II, and after restoration it was rarely used for temporary exhibitions. Now, after decades, the antiquarium reopens to visitors with more than 160 pieces. Many come from more recent discoveries as a result of new excavation projects. Archaeologist Luana Tonolio is one of the curators of the permanent exhibition of the antiquarium. She says 1/3 of Pompeii still lies buried.
What we can see now are 2/3 of Pompeii. About 1/3 of the city still remains to be excavated. Of the 66, 44 hectares of the original city have been brought to light so far.
Many findings recovered from Pompeii are placed in museums across Italy and around the world.
And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.